subject today is HDMI, the High Definition Musical Interface. So, as you know, I've been moving around, and this is engineer Darren Meyer and his office. Well, it isn't engineer Darren Meyer, but it is his office. And you can see his favorite speakers. These are Harbeths. I think you can see those. Can you see those? These little Harbeths are great speakers. They're only two ways, but they are a terrific loudspeaker. Very complex crossover in them. Darren is one of the lead engineers on Sprout, and this is the new Sprout, Sprout 2, which is kind of cool. And Sprout is my son Scott's project, and Darren is one of the lead engineers on that. So, and Nipper. So we want to talk about HDMI, and let me read the question here. Dan in Newcastle, Australia. Hey Paul, why don't most of, or if not all, two-channel audio products have HDMI inputs and outputs? I use a HTPC for all I don't know what that is. For all his music, such as SACD and DVD-A, and I'd like to use my TV screen for control and visuals for artists, etc. At the moment, I need to use an AVR, an audio video receiver, which, while great for surround sources, is not perfect for two-channel music. I can't see why an integrated amp cannot take the audio from HDMI and process it through its stacks and pass the video onto the screen. Well, of course they can, and some do, though very few high-end products do. And I think the reason for that, well, let me just say that the reason we don't do it is because most of the decoding chips that you use to make or to take the HDMI, which is typically encrypted and sent over a HDMI cable, the reason we don't do it is most of the chips that decode all of that are typically made from Sony, though not all. And those Sony chips have built-in DACs, as do most of the HDMI chips. Very, very few, and I haven't done an exhaustive search, but very few that we've looked into actually have just straight I2S outputs that can then go into separate DACs, which is the only way that we would be interested in developing such a thing, because the quality of the DAC is very important to us as audiophiles. Secondly, there's very little two-channel information that goes over HDMI. HDMI is typically used for multi-channel, and as a company, PS Audio, we're not really into home theater and surround sound. I mean, I have a gorgeous 12-channel, 12.1, whatever it is, Dolby Atmos system at my home in a cool theater. Oh, you know what? One of these days I ought to take the camera home and show you my theater. That would actually be kind of cool. Anyway, just a thought. Ooh, what's this? I don't know what Darren's working on, but this is a big, beautiful cap. And these are tube sockets. What's that boy up to? Was up to something. Anyway, where were we? HDMI, mostly surround sound, mostly multi-channel audio, of which our company really doesn't focus its efforts in terms of building products, because our interests lie in two-channel audio and making the highest value, greatest affordability, but quality is what really matters to us. We want to build two-channel audio products that are just nothing short of remarkable, and that's what's interesting to us. That all said, I can imagine where people would say, well, wait a minute. You make a product called the DirectStream Memory Player, and that plays SACDs, and SACDs, my friend, are two-channel for the most part. And that would be correct. So then we might ask, well, why don't you then put that HDMI so I can just connect it? Because I know, like, my Oppo puts out HDMI, and I know that the raw digital data off of an SACD goes through HDMI and into compatible receivers and AVRs that can do that. So why doesn't a high-end company do that? And that, if it's more the essence of the question, is actually something that has a very simple explanation, and that is the copyright laws. So when an SACD, the Sony Super Audio CDs that we're talking about with these layers of DSD, they are encrypted, okay? And it's pretty cool because every single SACD has a unique identifier on it that has to be decoded, so that's how they got the access to the master tapes that many SACDs are made from. And for copyright reasons, Sony signed agreements that said, hey, we're going to make sure through encryption that no one's going to have access to these wonderful master tapes. So when you take an HDMI output from a transport like an Oppo, let's say, that reproduces it, or a Sony device, that HDMI signal is encrypted. Okay, it's just a bunch of garbled digital audio that has to go into a Sony authorized chipset, and that Sony authorized chipset does the decryption but does not put out a digital audio signal. Why? Because if it did, then somebody could copy it, right? And they won't allow that, and I don't blame them. I mean, this is copyright. So what they do is they build the DACs into this chip. So it's a closed, sealed system, and that's something we're not interested in doing. I mean, why would I just take a $20 chip, throw it in a box, and call it a high-end product, of which it is not? So no, we just wouldn't do that. And just to finish up this discussion, you might ask, well then, wait a minute. I know that if I buy your DMP, your direct stream memory player, you allow me to then take the raw digital master files off of the SACD and play it into a direct stream DAC or a direct stream junior. So how does that work? Because I know it uses an HDMI cable, but I also know that it doesn't use HDMI. So here's what we did. To get around this problem, yes, we use an HDMI cable. We've done that for years with our I2S format. To get around this problem, what we did is we came up with a digital handshake that says you have to have a PS Audio DAC connected to this PS Audio player, so that when the SACD plays and we get the raw DSD master files, which are amazing sounding, we guarantee that only a PS Audio DAC is connected, and that DAC will only allow the analog output to come out, therefore not violating Sony's copyrights. And we don't want to get sued by Sony, and we don't want to violate any copyrights. So that's the only way I know to have an actual high-end audio DAC playing SACD legally. I hope that answers your question. Thanks. Bye.